smoke drifted through the ruined command deck. Metal groaned somewhere deep inside the ship as if the hull itself was in pain. Commander Elias Grant stood among the broken lights and dead screens, watching the last battle feed fade into black. The war was over. Not because they lost, but because the Galactic Council had said enough. Outside the viewport, a dozen human ships hung in orbit over the dead world below. Flames still burned across the planet's surface. The air shimmered with the heat of orbital fire. Elias could almost hear the screams through the silence. He had seen wars end before, but not like this. A comms officer limped to him, clutching a cracked tablet. "Council orders, sir. All human fleets are to stand down. Immediate and permanent." Elias read the message. His jaw tightened. "They say it's for everyone's safety," he said quietly. "They're afraid of us," the officer muttered. He didn't answer. Outside, the alien ships were already forming ranks, shining clean and untouched. Their weapons still glowed, but none were aimed at each other. Only at the humans. 2 days later, Elias stood in the council hall surrounded by alien delegates. The air smelled of metal and cold glass. Their eyes watched him like he was a loaded weapon that might go off at any moment. The high speaker's voice echoed through the chamber. "Humanity's conduct in war shows instability. You burn too bright. You fight too long. For the safety of all species, humans are hereby banned from military command and armed conflict." A ripple of approval swept through the room. Elias didn't move. He looked at the alien faces and saw no mercy, only fear. They didn't want peace. They wanted humans contained. When they asked him to respond, he said only, "You think this will save you?" Then he walked out. Back on Earth, the sky was quiet. Military bases stood empty. The flags were gone. The fleets were dismantled. Soldiers were told to go home and forget the stars. Elias watched workers cut apart ships that had carried heroes. It felt like a funeral without music. He sat alone in a hangar at night, staring at a rusted engine core. The air was heavy with the smell of oil and dust. Somewhere outside, rain tapped against the metal walls. He thought of the men and women who had followed him into battles that no one remembered now. They had fought to keep the galaxy alive, and now the galaxy had turned on them. He poured a drink and sat in silence. The room lights flickered. Then his old terminal buzzed, a sound he hadn't heard since the war. The screen came alive, filled with static. Then a voice cut through the noise. "Commander Grant, do you copy?" He froze. The signal was human, encrypted with military code that no one should still be using. "Who is this?" he said. The voice came again, faint but urgent. "They lied to you, sir. The ban wasn't about peace. They're coming, and they don't want humans fighting back." Static swallowed the rest. The screen went black. Elias sat still for a long moment. Outside, thunder rolled across the empty base. He looked toward the dark horizon where the old shipyards used to burn with light. His hand clenched around the glass until it cracked. Then he stood, his eyes fixed on the dead terminal. Whatever was coming, it wasn't over. Not yet. Elias Grant drove through the ruins of the old launch yard. Rusted cranes leaned against the gray sky. Rain fell in thin lines, striking the broken metal. He stopped at the edge of the platform where ships once waited for war. The signal he heard last night played again in his mind. A human voice, clear and scared. "They're coming." He didn't believe it was a trick. The encryption was old Earth military from before the ban. Whoever sent it knew how to reach him. That meant they were real and in danger. He found an old scout ship in storage, stripped of weapons but still able to fly. It took him hours to fix the power cells and clear the dust from the cockpit. When the engines came to life, the sound filled the hangar like a heartbeat. He lifted off through the rain and climbed past the clouds into the black. The coordinates in the message led to the edge of the Perseus Rift, a place forgotten since the last war. It was quiet out there. Too quiet. The stars looked pale. as if the void itself was holding its breath. The outpost appeared on his sensors at the last minute, hidden under a field of static. It was small, half dead, floating over a gas giant. He powered down and approached with caution. No lights, no signals, just a cold shadow against the planet's stormy glow. Inside the docking bay, everything was silent. Dust floated in the air like ash. He stepped through the corridor, his boots echoing on the metal floor. The walls were covered with old unit symbols, scratched and faded. He found power cables burned and doors welded shut. Then he heard it. A faint sound, like a door opening somewhere deep inside the base. He raised his light. A man stepped out from the shadows holding a rifle. "Stand down," Elias said quietly. The man lowered his weapon after a long pause. "Commander Grant?" Elias nodded. The man's face was older, scarred, but familiar. "Aaron Cole," he said. "You were with the 9th Fleet." Cole gave a small grin. "We never stopped being with it." Elias followed him through the dark halls. There were more people hidden there, soldiers, engineers, pilots. All human. They looked tired but alive. Their uniforms were patched, their eyes sharp. Cole led him to a small command room lit by weak blue screens. "You heard the message," he said. "We sent it. The Council lied. The Vorn are awake again." Elias felt the air go cold. The Vorn. Machines built for war before the First Council Treaty. They had vanished after the last Great War, wiped out, or so everyone believed. "They came from the Dark Rim," Cole said. "Took whole colonies. The Council made a deal. They banned us so we wouldn't fight back. They thought if humans were gone from war, the Vorn would stop." Elias shook his head. "They think fear will save them." Cole's eyes hardened. "They think we'll stay quiet." Elias looked around the room. The people here were outlaws now, same as him. Yet their faces carried that old fire, the kind that had once made whole fleets follow a single voice. He felt it again, the call of command, the weight of duty. He stepped closer to the table. "How many ships?" "3, maybe 4 if we fix the reactors." "Then we start there," Elias said. "If the Vorn are coming, we won't wait for permission." Cole nodded slowly. "We already sent scouts into the rift. One hasn't come back." Before Elias could answer, the alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed across the walls. A voice shouted over the intercom. "Contact. Unknown signature inbound." Cole ran to the controls. "Vorn scout ship. It's found us." Elias stared at the radar screen. The shape was clear and fast. Too fast. The enemy had arrived before they were ready. He turned to the crew. "Seal the base. Get the guns online." Cole looked at him. "We're not armed for a fight." Elias stepped toward the window where the stars were turning red. "Then we make one." The alarms tore through the silence of the outpost. Red lights flashed across the narrow corridors. Elias Grant ran beside Aaron Cole toward the command deck as the base shook under the pressure of the approaching Vorn ship. "How close?" Elias shouted. 30 seconds, Cole answered. "They're scanning everything." Elias looked at the screens. The Vorn vessel was massive compared to the outpost, its hull made of black metal that absorbed light. No signals came from it, no demands, only the steady pulse of its engines as it closed in. "Power up the reactors," Elias said. "Get every weapon online." "We have 2 defense turrets that might still work," Cole replied. "They won't stop a Vorn scout." "Then we buy time," Elias said. "Launch every shuttle you have. If we stay, we die." The crew moved fast. Doors slammed open and closed. Sparks flew from overloaded cables. The old base came alive with noise and heat. Elias watched the sensors as the enemy ship stopped above them. A beam of blue light cut through the storm outside, slicing across the outpost like a knife. "They're locking on," Cole said. "Not yet," Elias said. He slammed his hand on the console. "Fire all guns." The turrets fired into the dark. The blasts lit up the Vorn hull, but the beams bent and faded. Then a second later, the outpost shook as energy fire hit back. The ceiling cracked. Flames burst from the side wall. "Hull breach on deck 3, someone yelled. "Seal it," Elias ordered. Cole looked at him. "We can't hold. The ship's going to tear us apart." Elias stared at the readout. The Vorn ship hovered above, moving slowly, almost watching. They weren't trying to destroy. They were studying. "They want to know if we're still fighting," he said quietly. A new signal appeared on the screen, a narrow jump window flickering weakly near the gas giant's ring. Elias pointed at it. "We take it. Get to the hangar." They ran through the corridors. Smoke filled the air. Men and women shouted orders, carrying wounded toward the shuttles. The floor vibrated under their feet. Another blast hit the outer wall, throwing Elias against a bulkhead. He pulled himself up and kept moving. In the hangar, 3 ships waited. One was barely holding power. The others sparked under repair. Cole climbed into the nearest cockpit and shouted, "This one can fly, but not far." "We don't need far," Elias said. He turned to the rest of the crew. "Anyone who can't lift off, get to the escape pods. No one stays behind." Engines screamed to life. The docking bay doors opened to the red glow of the planet below. As the shuttles launched, the Vorn ship turned, scanning the debris. A beam of light followed them, locking onto their flight path. "They've seen us," Cole said. "Keep moving," Elias answered. "Full power." The Vorn ship fired. The beam hit one of the shuttles, breaking it apart in silence. Pieces scattered across space. Elias didn't look back. He forced the engines to full burn. The ship shook and twisted as they entered the jump window. Light filled the cockpit. Gravity pulled them in every direction. Then the storm vanished. The ship came out into cold, open space. Dead ships floated around them. Hundreds of them. Old human warships, forgotten after the ban. Cole stared out the window. "What is this?" Elias looked at the markings on the nearest hull. They were all from different fleets, all stripped of power, left to drift. "The graveyard," he said quietly. "The Council didn't destroy them. They hid them." He reached for the controls. The sensors showed faint power signatures inside the wrecks. Maybe something still worked. Cole turned to him. "You think we can bring them back?" Elias stared at the dark fleet ahead, rows of dead ships waiting in silence. "We can try," he said. A low signal began to pulse across the radar. Not Vorn. Human. Cole looked at him. "Someone else is out here." Elias leaned closer to the screen. The signal was weak, but moving toward them. "Then we're not the only ones who broke the ban," he said. Engines hummed in the dark as Elias Grant's ship drifted through the graveyard. Cold light from distant stars flashed across the wrecked hulls. The fleet stretched for miles, silent and broken, a forgotten army frozen in time. Aaron Cole scanned the radar. "There's power in some of them. Low, but there." Elias looked through the viewport. "Then we start waking them up." They docked with the nearest ship, an old cruiser called the Ardent. Inside, the corridors were covered with dust and ice. Their footsteps echoed. Emergency lights flickered weakly. The air smelled of oil and rust. Elias ran his hand across the wall, feeling the cold metal beneath his gloves. "Get the core online," he said. Cole and 2 engineers worked fast. Sparks flew from broken panels. The ship groaned as if remembering what it was. Then, with a low rumble, the lights came alive. The Ardent breathed again. Elias stood on the bridge, watching the systems wake one by one. Engines, life support, targeting sensors, all old but still there. A small grin touched his face. "We can make this work." Cole looked at him. "You want to rebuild the fleet?" "I want to remind the galaxy what we are," Elias said. "They banned us from war because they feared us. Maybe it's time they remember why." The message spread fast through the hidden channels. Every surviving human soldier who still had a ship, a drone, or even a working engine began to answer. They called themselves the Iron Line. The ghosts of the old war returned to life. Over the next weeks, they repaired ships and scavenged weapons. Sparks lit the hangars as welders worked without sleep. The sound of hammers and engines filled the air again. For the first time since the ban, the humans were building something together. But peace didn't last. One night, alarms cut through the silence. A scout drone picked up a movement near the edge of the graveyard. Cole checked the screen. Vorn, a full warship this time. Elias stared at the readout. They found us again. The crew rushed to battle stations. The newly rebuilt ships began to power up. The Ardent shook as its engines roared to life. Outside, the dead fleet lit up like a city waking from a nightmare. "Status," Elias called. Cole replied, "We have 12 ships ready for combat. The rest still cold." "That's enough," Elias said. "Let's see if they remember how humans fight." The Iron Line formed up in broken formation. Engines flared blue as they turned toward the incoming Vorn vessel. The machine ship was massive, a black shape against the stars. It opened fire first, beams slicing through the dark. One human frigate exploded instantly. Elias didn't flinch. "All guns, return fire." The space around them filled with light. Missiles streaked across the void. Cannons thundered. The Ardent shuddered with recoil. The Vorn ship took the hits but kept moving. Its shields glowed, burning with heat. Cole shouted over the noise. "We're not breaking through." "Then get closer," Elias said. "They're machines. We hit them where it hurts." The Ardent surged forward. Another beam struck its side, tearing open the hull, but Elias held steady. The humans fought like they always had. Angry, desperate, alive. 2 more ships joined him, firing everything they had. The Vorn ship began to slow, its engines flickering. Cole turned. "Their core is exposed." Elias nodded. "Fire." The shot hit dead center. The Vorn ship's hull split apart in a silent flash. Metal fragments drifted across space. The humans cheered over the comms, their voices rough and shaking. Elias didn't celebrate. He looked at the wreck burning in the distance. "They'll come again," he said quietly. Cole stepped beside him. "Then we keep fighting." Across the galaxy, alien sensors picked up the battle. The Council tried to hide it, but the footage spread anyway. Every world saw human ships fighting again. Fear spread faster than light. On a distant command ship, a Vorn signal flared and reached deep into the dark. Thousands of machine eyes opened across unknown systems. Elias didn't know it yet, but the war had just started again. The stars burned red as the human fleet entered the Vorn core system. Dozens of warships moved together, their engines cutting white trails across the dark. The Iron Line had grown. More humans had come, answering the call, bringing whatever they had left. Every ship was armed, every soldier ready. There was no turning back. Elias Grant stood on the bridge of the Ardent, watching the planet ahead. It was not like any world he had seen. It was a machine world, covered in towers that reached into space, each one burning with cold light. Rivers of molten metal flowed between them. The planet pulsed like a living thing. "All ships report in," Elias said. Cole answered from his station. "All 12 squadrons in formation. We are reading heavy power buildup from the surface. They know we are here." Elias nodded. "Good, let them see us coming." The Vorn fleet rose from the shadow of the machine planet. Thousands of ships, perfectly aligned. No sound, no signal. Just the silent storm of metal and fire moving toward them. The bridge lights dimmed under the strain of the power surge. Cole looked at Elias. "Outnumbered 50 to 1. Elias stared ahead. "Then we give them a reason to fear us again." The battle began. The void exploded with light. Missiles and plasma fire crossed between the fleets. The Ardent shook as enemy beams tore across its hull. Crew shouted damage reports, their voices sharp with fear and focus. Elias moved between stations, calm and steady. "Keep firing," he said. "Aim for their reactors." The humans fought like no one else could. They didn't move in perfect lines. They cut, turned, and hit hard. Every time a ship went down, another filled its place. The iron line bled, but it did not break. Then the planet itself began to glow. Massive cannons unfolded from its surface, aimed straight at them. The Vorn voice came over every channel, cold and steady. "You are chaos. You should have stayed silent." Elias gritted his teeth. "And you should have stayed asleep." The planet fired. A beam of white fire sliced through space, tearing apart 3 human ships in seconds. The shockwave hit the rest of the fleet, shaking them to the core. Systems flickered. Engines faltered. Cole looked at Elias. "We can't take another hit like that." Elias turned to the screen showing the planet's power core readings. Deep under the metal surface, he saw something. A weak point. A single chance. "We can end this, but we have to get inside." Cole stared at him. "Inside that? It's suicide." "Maybe," Elias said. "But if we don't, there won't be anyone left to remember why we fought." He sent orders across the fleet. Half the ships formed a shield wall, taking the full fire from the enemy to cover the Ardent. The rest followed him toward the planet's surface. Explosions lit the dark. The hull groaned. Fire rolled through the corridors. They broke through the atmosphere. Towers of metal and plasma surrounded them. The ship screamed as it dove straight toward the planet's core. Cole yelled, "Reactor overload in 60 seconds." Elias locked the course. "That's all we need." The ship crashed through a layer of armor and fell into the core chamber. Blinding light filled the bridge. Elias grabbed the control panel. "All power to forward weapons. Fire everything." The last blast tore through the core. The world shook apart. The Vorn fleet froze. Their systems died one by one. The explosion spread outward, turning the sky into fire. The Ardent was caught in the blast. Alarms screamed. Cole turned toward Elias. "We did it." Elias looked out at the burning horizon. "No one will ban us from fighting again." The ship's hull split apart. Light filled the bridge. Then everything went silent. Hours later, rescue ships moved through the wreckage. The Vorn were gone. The human fleet was shattered, but alive. Among the wrecks, a signal blinked faintly from the Ardent's blackened remains. It was Elias's voice, recorded before the last strike. "You banned us from war. You feared what we could do. You were right to be afraid. Not of what we destroy, but of why we fight.